what I hope you remember is you are worthy. You can do it. Don't let anything hold you back. The only thing in your way is yourself, right? And you are so good, girl. Like, you got this. And so I just want you to believe in yourself, ask for it, because you only get the things you ask for, and you are worthy.
Hey, Mama. Welcome to the Working Moms Playbook, the go-to podcast for moms balancing careers and babies. I'm your host, Antonia DePace, former editor, current marketing maven, and mom of one. Each week, we're breaking down the systems, mindsets, and support every working mom needs to thrive, whether it be at work, at home, or everywhere in between. So let's get into it. Welcome back, everybody, to the Working Moms Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Antonia DePace, and per usual, I am just so excited to welcome you all back. This week's episode of WMP is welcoming Lauren Wu, who is a former chief privacy officer in the digital health space. And during her time in that position, she led high-stakes regulatory and compliance work, all while managing the demands of executive leadership, which I feel like a lot of us are very familiar with, and motherhood. Currently, she's the face behind Heart-Led Leadership, which helps high-achieving women rethink performance, advocate for themselves, build more sustainable ways of working and living, which is that not just like the thing that 24/7, because there just never seems to be a balance. But today we're going to be tapping into her expertise to learn more specifically about career decision making during pregnancy and maternity leave. So yes, that big overarching elephant in the room. So welcome, Lauren. I am so excited to have you on.
Thank you so much, Antonia. I am so excited to be here. This is such an important topic. It happens more frequently than people think. And, I really want to tell people that it is so important to talk about this because there is freedom here. And I want people to know that it's okay. This should be a part of transition that people feel comfortable with and not guilty for. And just getting that out of the way,
Yeah, for sure. And it's very scary. I mean, I think I was given a very harsh reality check when I was pregnant with my first John, and I was in the magazine industry, and I was like, everything's going to be okay. I'm still going to do everything I'm doing now. He'll sleep in the office, and then we'll do all these things. Oh my God, please. I was so unaware. And then I had him, and not only did expectations suddenly change at work, but all of a sudden I was faced with this very harsh reality of you're not waking up at 6 a.m. to go work out. I mean, my previous life, I guess to give you an idea, it was wake up 6 a.m. We're going on air, right? For a local station. Then going to the office. Then working out on our way home, making dinner somehow. And then going to bed to wake up to do it all over again. And then events would be sprinkled in.
Yeah.
When you get pregnant, when you have a baby, you really do often feel like there is a pause in your career. Mm-hmm. And it is it's portrayed as that, right? It's not just a feeling. It's society actively portrays it as that. But now that I'm in this realm, I'm 31, I have a child, I'm still building a career, as many of our listeners are. I've realized that I need to start to pivot that mindset, right? Which I think you're a huge advocate for, and you'll be able to bring more expertise on that. So how do you really pivot and change that mindset for career decision making during this time in life that is just so much so illustrated as a pause?
Yeah, well, for your listeners' sake, I have 3 kids, okay?
Yeah.
So,
yes.
And I have transitioned once while I was on maternity leave.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and once while I was 5 months pregnant. So I have the experience of doing it kind of in different ways. So we can talk about how those were different, which one kind of felt better or worse otherwise for me.
Yeah.
And it's going to fit differently for different people in different circumstances, right? And I want to just kind of clear the air on that. So much of that has to do with your environment at work. And I want to get that out of the way too, because I was in a safe space when I had my second child. I had this magical, like perfect environment of supportive boss, supportive team, supportive boss's boss. And it was just like beautiful. And so there was no need to transition. There was no need to look for a job. I was super happy. And so if you have that and you're wonderful, you don't need to look for anything, right? Like enjoy the time, enjoy the pause, take your full leave. If you're feeling like you need extra time out, take the extra time. So I had to have extended disability for both or for all three due to postpartum. And so take that extra time if you need to, so that's my story for not changing.
Right.
So the story for changing during maternity leave. I was coming from a very toxic environment where I wasn't even sure I would have the same job coming back.
Okay. Was this with your first or which? Because you have three.
This was my first. This was my first one.
Yeah.
And, so I'm an attorney. I'm a highly specialized attorney. And I was very concerned coming back under new leadership that my job would be significantly reduced because of just inklings that I had, right? Like this new guy came in, he was kind of hired to be a yes person. He clearly didn't understand the dynamics of what had been going on and frankly didn't care to listen. And he was believing a lot of the VPs and not legal. And it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like a supportive environment. And I, at the time had already had a miscarriage, and that miscarriage, people were just like, we expect you to be back to work in a week.
Nice.
And I'm like,
great.
Cool. That's super great.
That's telling.
Yeah. So, and he wasn't there for that. So I can't blame that on him. That I blame that on the company, but that is very telling. And so then fast forward to him coming, he was actually very great about the leave. So I can't say anything about that in particular, but I just had this inkling that my role would change. So someone reached out to me while I was on leave and was like, I found your profile on LinkedIn. So by the way, ladies, get your LinkedIn looking sharp because people are headhunting and they don't care what you are. If you are pregnant, if you're nursing, if you're on leave, they don't care. Get your LinkedIn looking sharp because they are looking, recruiters are looking, and they will headhunt you. So someone came across my profile and reached out and were like, we have been looking for an attorney with your exact specifications. You are the only person we want to hire. Are you interested? And I'm like, dude, I am 8 months pregnant. Like, no, I'm about to take this maternity leave because if I leave at this point, I won't have safety from my maternity leave because I'm in California. So again, also know your state rights. So just for your listeners, know what's protected under your state rights. So in California, I would have my California leave, but I wouldn't have the additional weeks that my company would guarantee.
Okay.
So just know what you would be missing out if you change jobs while you're pregnant. Yeah. So just little, insight there. And I am not a lawyer for employment law, so I can't speak to those specifications on maternity leave. Anyway, so I was like, hit me up once my leave is done, right? Well, it turns out he kept reaching out while I was on maternity leave. And I was like, God, this guy's really persistent. And I was like, cool, let's interview. I think I don't want to go back. I'm actually interested. So I interview, informally, just meet this guy for coffee. And I have my husband on standby to just sidebar. I'm like, what if this guy turns out to just be like some random stalker?
Yeah. Protection.
Right. I'm like pregnant. He turns out to be the nicest guy in the whole wide world and to this day is my mentor. But
love that.
I didn't know at the time, right? Anyway, so fast forward, I end up having an emergency C-section with my daughter.
Okay.
And I am getting wheeled into my C-section and I'm supposed to have my formal interview with what is later Roche the next day. And I'm like, Michael, my husband, you got to email that Roche guy. I'm going to miss my interview tomorrow. So fast forward, I ended up having to have an almost 8-month maternity leave because my daughter was born super premature. I almost
Okay.
died on the operating table.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. It was late onset preeclampsia. I lost a lot of blood. It was not great. But long story short, we're both here. We're both doing great. And I spent 7 years at Roche. And it was a dream job until it wasn't. And I, to this day, love that man as my manager. And it was wonderful. And I tell you, that transition was phenomenal because I basically went back to that first job. So I didn't quit while I was on leave, what I did, because the law demanded I go back to work.
Okay.
So the way it works when you're on leave and taking leave, you need to go back and work at least 2 to 3 weeks, maybe a month in some cases. So again, check your laws and then give leave so that you kind of go back, right? So I went back under my state's laws. I only need to work 2 weeks. So I gave my 2-week notice the first day I was back. I was like, peace out.
And how was that how was that process with this man who's like now your mentor? I mean, he clearly knew you were pregnant. You were very upfront about it from the get. Like, what was that like response? Were they just like, it's fine, we'll have you come on, you'll take some maternity leave and you'll come back, like you're worth the position? Or like what did that look like?
He was like, I will take you any way I can get you. Like he was like, come on at 8 months, come on during your leave. Like, I mean, here's the thing though. I had to protect myself and I was not about to give up more maternity leave for this role when I had guaranteed leave with this other company. So for me and for your listeners, I kind of played the system, right? Like, and that may sound manipulative to some listeners, but like I gave my time to that first toxic company. Yeah. They owed me that leave, right? And so as far as I was concerned, like that leave, I had suffered that miscarriage and I had put in my time for my pregnancy. That leave was mine. And so when, what was interesting was that Roche, they waited almost a year. They held that position open for almost a year for me. And so this is my other thing is that won't happen every time. But if someone really wants you for a position, they might wait for you. And so throw it out there. Just say like, hey, I can't make the switch right now, but I'm very interested in this role. Or could you wait for me for 3 months until I can go back to my job and give leave? Because switching, you can switch on maternity leave. You absolutely can, but you may in certain instances have to pay back certain things like your insurance. Okay. You may have to pay back a few things. So just know what those things are. And that's the trade-off that you would make. But you can always ask your next employer for a bonus to cover those payments. So it's
all about knowing.
It's all about the knowledge, doing the research and knowing. And you know what? If your next employer wants you bad enough, you just build that into your offer. Yep. And so that's the important piece, right? And just be upfront and tell them where you are, because the more your next employer knows about your situation and the more they want you, that, they'll make it happen. Yeah. It's shocking how much they will make happen for you. They have a lot of levers they can pull.
So that was your first situation. What was the second one?
So the second one, I was at Roche and sadly they had done a huge reorg. My boss, the one who had hired me, had been reorged out of the system after 20 plus years of working there. Okay. And it was becoming not the place I wanted to work anymore, unfortunately. And I was 5 months pregnant and people knew I was pregnant. And I it was just becoming very toxic. And I'm a high risk pregnancy every time. And so I was concerned for my health, if I'm being honest. And also it was just a place that I was like, I'm not happy here anymore. And I was getting headhunted like crazy. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start taking these calls. But I made sure the recruiter asked wherever they went what their maternity leave policy was and how long I had to be there to qualify for the maternity leave. And in every single place, you just had to be there for 6 months. And under California law, technically you had to be paying into disability for a year. Well, I had been just at different companies. So it would end up being fine. Again, check your state laws, right?
Right.
But so everything was going to work out great as long as I made the move very quickly. And so, I had like 3 offers on the table and I picked the one where I felt the best gel. And with the team, especially the legal team, I ended up having a great, 4 years or so. And then unfortunately, due to other health issues, I had to bow out. I've been on a health sabbatical ever since. But I had a great 4 years where I chose Evidation Health and, it was wonderful. It was definitely a challenge. I will tell your listeners, especially if you're an executive and in the C-suite, it was a challenge to come in and only have about 3.5 to 4 months and then go out. So I spent most of that time building relationships and building a transition plan for my leave and like kind of creating a structure so that, especially since I do compliance and privacy, like here's what I want to see happen while I'm out. Luckily, we hired my number 2 from Roche to follow me. So I had my number 2 guy, like who I could trust with anything.
Right. Who was already like used to your methods and you were already used to him. That worked out. Definitely.
It was amazing. Right. So as soon as he started and he and I are personal friends. So he would just call me up like, Lauren, what's going on? And I'd be like, okay, I'm on leave, but like do this instead. Right. But don't tell anyone you called me because I'm not working. Right. And so, it worked out great. And I had another extended leave because of my disability, but I did go back sooner than I did on my other leaves. So I will say, transitioning during pregnancy is a little, from me, my experience was a little more stressful just because you do have that short period. So if you're in a C-suite role, and C-suite again is like the CEO, chief something, just in case some listeners don't know. But if you're in those roles, it's a little harder, I think, but it's doable and they'll make it work. And like in the case of some companies, maybe that role has been open for a little while. So they'll make it work for you.
Let's circle back to like negotiating timing, transitions, and like especially when you're pregnant, right? So when the headhunter reached out to you, you were 8 months pregnant. It was right. No,
that was the boss. That was the boss from Roche.
Yeah. You were some months pregnant for some of, and for, I think you said 5, right? 5 months pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You were clearly pregnant, right? You would probably announce,
especially with number 3, that stuff shows fast.
But you would announce it. I mean, probably like a quick social search. You know what I mean? Like it was more announced. But it's hard because many women during that time, whether you're super early and you've just found out and you haven't told anybody, right? That's one end of the spectrum. Or the other end of the spectrum is that like you are clearly pregnant. You have told people. During that timing and transition, it's so hard almost to feel. This sounds so silly coming out of my mouth, but it's really true. It almost feels hard to feel worthy of accepting a promotion, of changing jobs, or launching something new because you almost feel guilty about, and we shouldn't, but you almost feel guilty about doing these things knowing that you're going to be gone. And maybe it's like a part of being a woman. Maybe it's a perfectionism thing. But how should we really be approaching that fear so that we do ask for the promotion or salary raise so that we aren't afraid to take the interview for the job. How do we change our mindset so that we can approach that fear and still continue our career growth?
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because this is actually one of the things I speak on is really owning who you are and being your authentic self. And part of being authentic to yourself is knowing that you are worthy. And, you know, that's the thing, right? Like, I hate to say like give yourself the confidence of a mediocre white male. But girl, give yourself the confidence of a mediocre white male. Like, you know, like, I mean, I hate to say that, but like, it's so true. Like, you know, and I say that as like a white woman, like it's, you know, we so often forget that we are doing something that is miraculous by having children. Bless every single woman out there because it is miraculous what we are doing as moms, as aunties, as women in the workforce. And we need to believe in ourselves. We need to own it. We need to ask for the things to step up. There is still a dearth of women in the C-suite. I think the last stat I saw was 6% or something like that, or maybe it was 30% of women in the Fortune 500 was one of those statistics. That is abysmal to me because coming out of law school alone, 66% of law school grads are women.
Wow. So what happened to the rest of them?
Because law firms and general counsel positions are not set up to support women. Women bow out. But that's one. So if 66% are women, that is one position alone that should and could naturally go to a woman and often doesn't, right? I mean, that's mind-boggling. But you know, to me, this is just a natural step in what we do. So we need to ask for the things, and pregnancy and birth and waiting in maternity leave. It's a perfect opportunity to sit and reflect about what do we want next. Not that you should if you are overwhelmed, right? Like if you are overwhelmed and just surviving, girl, survive. Like I am not telling you to do extra. But if you have that chance and the ability to also take the time to have some self-care and reflect. If you have, so in some states you get a few weeks before the baby comes. I know in California you get 4 weeks that you can take that are optional. So use those 4 weeks to think through maybe a little bit. Am I happy where I am? Could I be reaching up higher? Take maybe an hour each week. You don't need the whole week, right? Take an hour. Take an hour to reflect. Am I happy? Am I whatever? Use that hour to update your LinkedIn. Make yourself approachable. LinkedIn is the best source for finding new people, for getting headhunted. It is what everyone uses. It's actually, funny enough, what a lot of people use to find me to even do my keynote speaking or my coaching. It's like the source for everything really these days. And it's a phenomenal resource. And it's also a great place for you to look through what might be next for you.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage your listeners to really not limit themselves just because they feel like they can't, because they're like, well, I have this baby. I need to focus on the baby. Yes, you do. But so should your spouse.
Yeah.
And a proper spouse, partner, whatever their title is for you, they should be equal in what they give up and what they give in to raising the baby.
Yeah. It is so hard. I mean, this world is really, it is so set up to not, it doesn't support women, and it makes it very hard, or parents in general, really, but especially women, it makes it so incredibly hard because you have built these careers or are building careers or are perhaps in an industry change or whatever it might be. We've spent years doing whatever we need to do to get to where we are today. And then it almost can feel as if it gets washed away back to ground zero, all because of the quote unquote inconvenience, right? that we're going to be gone for X amount of time. And it's that guilt factor and that pressure. And it's often unspoken pressure, I should add, in a lot of industries. I think some industries will be very outspoken about it. But in some industries, it's an unspoken pressure that often leads you to take less time, right?
Yes.
Like less maternity leave than what you are guaranteed.
Yes,
And it's for whatever reason, right? But it can really tear you apart when it comes to, we let's create two circumstances.
Yeah.
And then perhaps you can walk me through, like, we can role play the conversation. Does that work? I mean, I think that's kind of fun. There's 1,000,005 different conversations and role plays that we could do as moms.
Yeah, for sure.
Through different stages of life.
I'm putting my actress hat on.
Yes, put the actress hat on. But for the purpose of the interview and for our conversation, we're focusing a lot on, you're a mom, whether it be you've just found out you're pregnant, you're at one point in your pregnancy, or you are about to leave postpartum, whatever it is, right? We have all these different stages. Well, let's start out with a conversation, I guess, similar to what you probably had to have, right? But let's just, but it's just, let's say we're 6 months pregnant. We're actively looking for jobs, haven't had much luck because today's job market is horrific. And you finally get an interview, right? But let's say it is the first recruiter interview. So you're not to the VPs yet. You're impressing the first line. How do you initiate that conversation with these prospective employers without completely bowing yourself out of the opportunity?
So, and this is not a headhunter recruiter. This is the internal recruiter, right?
The internal recruiter.
I wouldn't tell this person. Here's who I would tell. I would tell HR. I would wait to get to HR, because that, not only is HR not allowed to share your biz, right? They are the person that's going to negotiate your salary. They're the person, and probably the hiring manager. The person who's going to negotiate your salary, they're the ones who are going to know the benefits. So I would wait and talk to the HR liaison. But so let's do that same question, but let's have you be the HR rep.
Okay.
Could you be the HR rep?
Yeah,
okay.
I'll be the HR rep. So thank you, Lauren, so much for coming on to the interview. I'm so excited to learn more about you. We love X, Y, and Z about your resume and your experience. And I would love to learn more about what you're looking for in that next opportunity for you. What would seal that deal?
Yeah. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I've loved everyone I've met. Okay. Yada, 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 yada.
Yeah.
So, I'd love to hear more about some of the benefits you offer, especially around family leave and things like that.
Yeah. We have great family leave for both parents. So we have paternal and maternity leave, where we do 80% of the pay for up to 3 months. And then after that, when you come back, we go back to our regular schedule.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. And, remind me what the start date expectation is for this role, and kind of when how quickly you're hoping to ramp up this role.
Yeah. We are looking to ramp up this role as soon as possible. However, we are looking for the right candidate so that this is a long-term position. We want someone to really be a part of the family, so that way we can continue to grow and keep our goals consistent and be able to scale our business without, consistently having to replace the same position over and over and over again.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. I'm all about building long-standing programs. For me, that's part of the fun, right? Is building and creating privacy and compliance programs that last. But the maintenance is also so important in ensuring that people remain compliant. Right. So one of the things that I wanted to just be transparent about, because transparency is one of the key components of any privacy and compliance program, is I am actually 5 months pregnant. And so going into this role, I will need to be taking some maternity leave fairly quickly. However, I do already have a plan of how we would be able to accommodate that while I'm out. And my proposal would be that we would create a memorandum of coverage, and we would make sure that the roles that I would need covered could potentially covered either by a temp, which we could hire through this agency. And I would mention Axiom was normally the legal agency. Or we could use the existing, staff on the team to cover it, depending on what your preferences are. But I do believe that even though I will be out for that time, it will be just kind of a short blip in building a much more long-standing relationship. And I just wanted to be transparent about that, since you are hoping to start quickly. And I'm frankly really excited and don't want to wait either.
I love that response. I think that's so perfect. And you sounded confident. You didn't sound scared, right? To
Right.
bring up the fact that you're pregnant, which I think, even though pregnancy is normal, it's a normal miracle, right? It is somehow still not natural to like speak about it in the workplace.
Right.
So it was like very natural. And I love the blip part where you're like, you kind of like minimized it because it can feel so long, right?
And that's the thing. And you treat it just like any other strategy bump in the road. Bump was an intentional pun, by the way. Get it? It's and you're not minimizing it, because it is a lot of time and it is money that the company is going to spend on you that they weren't planning to spend necessarily right away. But every time a company hires a woman, let's face it, they know if the woman is within a certain age range, they might have to pay for leave. That is just part of the calculus. And it's unfortunate because it shouldn't matter. But that is why it is so important that men also take paternity leave, because then that cost becomes equalized. And this is something I preach to, back and forth. My husband did not take his paternity leave for our second child. And I was so mad at him because he, at the time, was the general counsel for a company. And I was like, people are looking at you to set an example. And if you don't take your paternity leave, other people won't take it either. And it also makes it look as if you don't believe paternity leave is important. And my husband is a feminist. He would tell you that he's raising 3 daughters, for goodness sake. And my mom lives with us. So he is surrounded by women. And he is very, very supportive of us. But I told him, I was like, this is a women's and men's issue. This is not one or the other. This is about equal rights. And so it is so important that paternity leave, and that's why we should call it parental leave. It is so important that parental leave be taken equally, so that it doesn't just become a women's cost. It becomes a cost across the board.
Yeah, it's so important. And that kind of segues into a next portion that I wanted to touch on a little bit. And I think that's just like the fact that we, looking at today's job market and how complicated it is and how competitive it is. Maybe there is a mom who has been looking for a job for like a year and a half, which I feel like is common these days. And then all of a sudden she gets an interview or 2 interviews, whatever it might be, right? Like all of a sudden there's this like flash of hope in this horrible sea that she's been in for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And now you're not making a decision just for your career, but you have to make a decision to go to a company that at least on paper looks like it's supportive to parents.
Yes.
Right? There has to be green flags there, which I think is part of the importance of being transparent, if you're pregnant or if you're about to take post-maternity leave, whatever it is. But when looking at those companies, what would you say are some of those green flags on paper?
I love this question. So I am not a big fan of unlimited PTO.
That's
However, it's totally a trick. It is, I'm like, warning, warning, warning. And everyone knows that, right? That being said, unlimited PTO can actually be a gift if used correctly. Now, you're not supposed to use unlimited PTO for things like family issues.
Okay.
Because that's what family leave is for. Um,
Right.
right? But you can potentially use it for things like kids' graduations, things like that. So what I would do is like clarify what family leave can be used for and ask things like, could I use, or not family leave, sorry, unlimited PTO. Can I use unlimited PTO for my kid's graduation? Can I use unlimited PTO for volunteering at my kid's school? What are the bounds of unlimited PTO? And if those bounds are really flexible, or are they only for vacation? Because if they're really flexible, that's a great green flag, right? And if they're really
Right.
strict and it's only for vacation, I'm not saying that's a red flag, but that's like a yellow flag, right? Because
Well,
you're
right.
like,
I mean, as a mom or as a parent in general, so many things pop up, and we're working this
yeah,
often, this 8 to 5, 9 to 5. If your kids are in daycare or if they're in school, oftentimes they have a half day where they're done by 3:30 and they're off
oh
the
my
bus by
gosh,
4. So it's,
girl.
it's not set up for success over here. So the
No,
unlimited PTO is very important.
right. Dude,
Yeah.
next year I have 3 different schedules. My oldest will be in middle school, my youngest will be in elementary school, and my middle will be in elementary school, my youngest will be in TK. All 3 different schedules at all 3 different schools, 3 different districts.
Oh, and like you're probably supposed to be able to pick them all up by like 3:30, right?
12:30, 2:45, and 3:15 in
Jeez.
3 different cities.
Oh my God. Like to be stay-at-home moms, because that's a whole day of travel.
That's
You
a
have to
day. It's
drop
a
them
day.
off.
Yeah, my oldest will be taking public transportation, and a shuttle, like, yeah, cause she's 10, she'll be 11
Yeah.
by then, and like middle
Yeah.
school. And actually she's so excited. But so I'm like, so
Yeah.
that eliminates 1.
Yeah. But there's still 2 others. It makes it so
yeah.
hard. So green flags, unlimited PTO.
Okay, some more green flags. So,
Yeah.
okay. I would say another green flag is, and this one has to do with your manager. Can you leave to go pick up and then get back on later? Can you do those things? Can you not be on at 8:00 if you've been on earlier, right? Do you have to show up? Right? If you do have work, so a lot of people are doing the hybrid remote / in-person. Sometimes everyone's in person. It's kind of a lot going on, right? Is there flexibility about when you show up in person? So, my husband, he's in person 3 days a week, and it's like very strict when they have to get in and get out. So that puts a lot of pressure on me. I'm luckily not luckily, but I'm on disability right now, so I'm not physically working. So it falls on me and my mom to like shepherd the kids around and do all this stuff. But if he had to do it, he would need flexibility from his manager. That's a green flag, right? But again, that's also manager dependent. So if it's like, heaven forbid, you have a reorg or get a new manager, and then you're dependent on that manager to be like, yes, no, yes, no. But those are green flags if a company will allow you to have flexibility for pickup and drop off, because some companies are like 9:00 show up or not, right? I would say other green and red flags are, how do they treat family medical leave stuff? Because sometimes family leave is very strict. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes they only give the state minimum. Sometimes they give more. So it's important to know what is permitted in your company policies. And I know this sounds very lawyerly of me, but use your policies, use your sick days, use all of those things, because especially as women, sometimes we don't fully take care of ourselves. And we're so focused on others, we forget self-care, and self-care is the best way to keep yourself healthy. But knowing the policies will also help you be able to take care of yourself and your family. Also, I would say wellness programs. So a lot of times the wellness and benefits program have lots of really cool incentives that you can take advantage of for families. And so I would highly suggest like looking into those. And those are generally really good green flags. You can get a lot of free stuff, like free sunscreen, free Band-Aids, free like free care stuff for your family. Green flags.
Free.
Green flags all the way. And I'm like, I'm sorry, that stuff adds up, you know?
Does.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's, oh girl, with 3 kids, the amount of sunscreen I go through for school, it's unreal. Also because they waste it, let's be honest. So some red flags though, right, are things like when you ask to take vacation time, and these sometimes like you can get this in recruiting. You can ask about like, what's the culture around vacation?
Okay.
If vacation is one of those where people have a hard time actually getting them on the books, but then you lose it if you don't take it. Like that's a really bad sign. Because like I've been at companies like that where they're like, oh, take your vacation. But then when you're like, these are my vacation days, they're like, no, you can't go then. You're like, okay, but this is my vacation time. So, how does that work exactly? If they make you take vacation days during maternity leave, sometimes that's allowed by law, sometimes that's not. Check your local laws. So that's to me, that's a red flag because I feel like that's shady. Let's see here. Trying to think what other red or green flags. I mean, do you have any that you can think of? Like,
I mean, bouncing off of I think like I can think of a red flag and I think I can think of a green flag. I think for a green flag, I mean, you called it out earlier, having it described as parental leave versus maternal and paternal. It's often listed as 2 different places. Now, obviously, I'd rather have it listed as paternal and maternity leave versus just maternal, like just maternity leave. Obviously, I would rather the differentiation than not at all. But in an ideal world where it's a company that's like perfect, totally normalized, it would just be called parental leave because it wouldn't matter if you're the dad or the mom. You would be getting the same amount. I think that would be a green flag. Now, my red flag, I would say, is going to a company, and this is like very hard, right, to know. I mean, you would have to, this is where LinkedIn would become very powerful to be able to click on the company name, look at the people who work there, but a company that is like all men.
I love that. Or
that's a red flag to me.
All the same, I hate to say this, color of men. Yeah. Because that too, to me, like I want some diversity. I want diversity of all things, right? Like no, that's such a good one. Oh,
yeah. I mean, that's a huge red flag because if they're all men, that means they've likely never had to deal with a maternity leave in office, right?
Yeah. Especially at that level.
Right. Unless perhaps they had an assistant that was a woman, right? And that means that they haven't had to deal with it and they haven't had to pick up the tracks and they haven't had to have a plan.
Brilliant.
So that's
so
a red
brilliant
flag to me. You have given amazing advice and amazing steps, and I love our role play. And I think that we could talk for another 2 hours and still not get to the bottom of everything and still not cover everything because this is such an important topic. I almost want to have listeners call in and ask questions during this episode.
We should do that.
Maybe we should do a live sometime soon. We should do that maybe. Like when this launches, we should do a live. But my closing question to you is for that listener, right, who's listening to this episode right now, waiting for the perfect moment to make a career move, ask for the raise, ask for the promotion. What do you hope she remembers after listening to this conversation?
Yeah, what I hope you remember is you are worthy. You can do it. Don't let anything hold you back. The only thing in your way is yourself, right? And you are so good, girl. Like you got this. And so I just want you to believe in yourself, ask for it because you only get the things you ask for and you are worthy.
Love that. And lastly, where can our listeners find you?
Yes, you can reach me at heartledleadership.org or I'm on Insta at heartledlauren, or my email address is heartledlauren, might sense the trend, at gmail.com.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you so much, Lauren. I am so grateful to have you on, and it's just been great. So thank you so much for all of your expertise and your stories. I know that our listeners are going to get so much out of this, and it was just a pleasure speaking with you. To those who are listening, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Working Moms Playbook. Per usual, you can reach me at the Working Moms Playbook podcast. And we have our website up now too. I am so happy to have season 3 on the run again. And I will see you again next Wednesday for our next episode. Thanks so much. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode of the Working Moms Playbook. And also, thank you so much for sharing this episode with any and every working mom who might benefit. Also, thank you for subscribing. It means so much to be able to continue to grow this village of working moms in a world where our villages can feel fairly small. Keep an eye out for next week's episode, always debuting on a Wednesday, and I can't wait to see you there.